It's making sure that every child, youth, and family is valued and they deserve the same experiences and opportunities as everyone else. So it's just really leveling the playing field. It's removing those barriers, no matter what they may be: financial, systemic, racial, diversity. It's really just making sure that everyone is on that level playing field and creating a truly inclusive community where everyone has the same opportunities.
We have a lot, I think the problem we have is that people typically are frustrated, and that of course develops into anger. And when you're frustrated and you don't know where to go, you start pointing fingers and you try, who to blame and what can I do about that, instead of saying the question, well, where can I help? And I think it takes a long process for people to understand that you have to be in that position of being able to help, to understand the bigger picture, to be able to have a result. And it takes a long time, and it can be frustrating at times, but at most times it's actually incredibly rewarding. But it is a difficult process. One of the things we talked about many years ago was with my office was, if our community is not connecting the way we should, we will be very, very busy. So we'll have people coming in, making complaints, getting frustrated, being angry, not knowing where to turn. If we as a community are working together with an inclusive environment and collaborative environment, we're going to get less of those individuals coming through the office with that frustration.
I think that over the last 10 years, and since COVID in particular, the middle class is kind of being eroded. And so I think there's so many more people now that are living in a precarious situation, whether that's in their housing, whether that's in their access to quality groceries, food security, even school supplies, education. So whether we can help through scholarships, bursaries, food support, all of those things are becoming more critical because there's so many more people that need that help now than there ever has been before.
Hi, I'm Sue.
And I'm Heath.
Together, we've created the Backyards to Boardrooms video podcast series.
Why? Because our planet has a problem. It is not very sustainable.
Luckily, we've come up with a solution to help. On Backyards to Boardrooms, we use the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to highlight the work being done in our communities.
We chat with local leaders about causes such as sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, and climate action. Backyards to Boardrooms,
where local action creates global impact. Hi, Heath.
Hi, Sue.
Episode 2, and I think we finally have my lighting dialed in.
I think we do.
It's a thing
many
about
modifications.
Many times, changing and rechanging, adding plants.
Set design, lighting design.
Yes, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you're into it.
That's exactly
And
it.
then, well, now we're in the fire and forced to change and fix. But
and who knows, it might change again.
Maybe. For now, I'm happy. I'm happy with this lighting. Thank you for helping me fix it.
You're welcome.
After we've completed 6 interviews already for our first 2 episodes. But episode 2, it's all about social inclusion.
Yeah.
3 really great conversations from the 3 guests that they're each from very different segments of our community.
And what's really cool about all these interviews is that you tend to know these people or know of these people. And every time we talk to somebody, I learn something new about them or about the work they do. Mm-hmm. And it's just really cool. I love this part.
So I'm really excited to dive into these conversations. We've got Vicki Prue from North Okanagan Youth and Family Services Society. We have Leanne Hammond from the Community Foundation of the North Okanagan, and Rachel Zubik from the Community Safety Office.
That's amazing. You didn't even look at your paper once.
No, I didn't. I memorized them.
You're so good at rattling off all those organizations. Now you can rattle off which SDGs we're going to work with.
Okay, here we go. Sustainable Development Goal number 4, talking about quality education, making sure that people are educated in our community. Sustainable Development Goal number 10, reduced inequalities, and how education and inequality plays into so many aspects of our community. And the third one is number 16, which is
Peace, justice, and strong institutions.
Strong institutions, which means organizations here in our community that are helping with that inclusivity.
Yep. So we'll have an opportunity to hear from these three people about how their organizations are actually taking large bites out of these United Nations goals on behalf of our little city of Vernon, British Columbia.
Here we go.
Here we go. Enjoy.
Episode 2, Backyards to Boardrooms. We have a very special guest with us today. We've got Vicki Prue, who's the Director of Communications at North Okanagan Youth and Family Services. The episode today is all about social inclusion and what that means in a community like Vernon, in a small town like where we live. So welcome, Vicki. We want to give us a little introduction to yourself and what NOIFIS is for you and for the community of Vernon.
Hi, Vicki. Great
Hi,
to have
guys.
you here.
Hi.
Thanks for having me. This is great. Yeah, we're thrilled to be here, obviously on behalf of North Okanagan Youth and Family Services Society, or for short, NOIFIS, which makes it a little bit easier. We are a social services agency that has been in the Vernon community, North Okanagan community, for over 50 years. We opened in 1974, and we offer a range of social programs that reflect the dynamic needs of the community. And the programs we offer are all about nurturing the healthy development of children, youth, and families in the North Okanagan.
Amazing. Amazing.
For myself, I have lived in Vernon for over 13 years. I grew up in Armstrong, so, this is somewhat home for me. I started my career here in Vernon with Sun FM radio, for anyone who may be familiar with that, and worked very closely with a lot of nonprofits and small businesses in town, and kind of made my transition into nonprofit from there. So I've been with NOIFIS for 2 years now, so by all standards at NOIFIS, that makes me very much a newbie. But the work that they do in the community is absolutely infectious, and I love to be a part of it.
And you're right across the street.
I know, it's a
Wave
super
at
quick
you.
walk.
Yeah.
So that's amazing, Vicki. And I think we met when you were with Sun FM, and I think shortly after that you were with the Vernon Winter Carnival, which is another really important pillar in our community here in Vernon, and that's been around for a very long time. So you've had some really impactful work in our community.
I feel so grateful. I've gotten to work with many nonprofits in town, and Vernon is really special. It's this really special community where we have so many great resources in so many different capacities, especially in the nonprofit sector, and everyone just really comes together. It's really that sense of community here that is unique to Vernon, for sure.
So that leads into our topic for today, which is social inclusion, but specifically coming from the perspective of the North Okanagan Youth and Family Services Society. Is that there's
Good
two S's
job.
on the end? Yeah.
You got it all.
What does successful inclusivity look like here?
I think for NOIFIS's perspective, we do a lot of actual social work. So we work with families, we work with kids, we work with youth who are definitely going through challenging times. And so really for us, it's about that full circle of care. It's making sure that we assess every individual's needs based on their situation and what is best for them to overcome the situations. And so for us, it's really making sure that every individual's needs and what they need is accessible in the community.
That's cool, because we were talking earlier about how you're a bit of a resource network for people, because you have an understanding of all the resources that are available for whatever need is presented to you. Is that right?
Absolutely. So we work really closely with the Ministry of Children and Family Development. We work with a lot of families who have kids who are either transitioning into or out of foster care, possibly going through adoption processes. We work with youth who are living independently on their own. We have contracts with School District 22. We have contracts with the City of Vernon, with Okanagan Indian Band. We work really closely with a lot of community resources. And so for us to be able to have our clients and our families and make sure that they are connected to everything that they possibly need, mental health care, physical health care, family counseling, anything that they possibly need to make sure that their family unit can be healthy and they can overcome whatever situation they're in, that's really important for us.
So what I'm hearing is successful inclusion looks like accessibility. Right?
Absolutely. And taking down all those barriers that so many people face. It's really a privilege to have common sense sometimes. And I think people take that for granted. Not everyone has had the same experiences in their life. Not everyone has had the same education. Not everyone has had the same luxuries, basically. So even something as simple as, just knowing where to turn if you need some help with groceries for the month. Not everyone knows that. So Vernon, I think, does a really good job, and Neufus does a very good job of just connecting people to the resources that they need, whatever their situation may be.
What I heard you say is common sense, but it's where common sense isn't so common, right? And you're helping it be a little bit easier for people to find.
I think a really good rule is if you have to classify common sense, it's probably not common sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
a
that.
lot of those things you talk about too, like the understanding of certain things. Like we all have our own ability to understand certain things, but depending on where you come from, to understand your world and the logistics of maneuvering and managing and applying for programs or understanding what programs exist. I mean, what it sounds like you do is you kind of level the playing field and give people that a little bit of a guidance as to where to go, how to do it, and how to stay connected.
Absolutely, and just those connections to different resources. Like I said, the North Okanagan, Vernon, we have so many great organizations here who can help so many different people in different capacities, but not everyone knows where to look for those things or that they even exist. So to be able to connect people, I think, is really key.
I love that. Human connection is so important for sustainability, our ability to connect and collaborate, and especially in Vernon, we're really good at collaborating, and that fills my heart up. It makes me so happy.
Me too.
Can you talk a little bit, Vicky, about some of the programs that you guys run? We were talking a little bit beforehand about some of the programs and how your partners in the community are so important in order for them to be successful.
Absolutely. So Neufus offers, as I mentioned, a variety of programs for families, youth, and kids. Some of the more, I guess, inclusive, accessible ones, just to keep on the theme of what we're talking about, we have a supported needs program, which is for parents with children who have been diagnosed with a supported need, or mainly we work with a lot of kids who have been diagnosed with autism and ADHD and ADD. And that's tough. It's a big transition for families when that diagnosis comes through. And so we work closely with social workers and make sure that the family is fully supported when they get that diagnosis, and what it looks like from a parenting perspective. How can you best support your child and make sure that everything is really accessible and inclusive going forward with that?
Does being diagnosed sort of open doorways and access to resources that you would normally have?
Absolutely, it does. And unfortunately, with our medical system, like anything, the diagnosis can take a lot of time right now. So, just to have someone who's able to connect you after you get that diagnosis, because a lot of families wait a few years to get the diagnosis. So to be able to have someone who's there to help you and support you and connect you to all the different resources that are going to make life easier ultimately is a great resource to have.
I think it's a tough thing to accept too, right? If you suspect there's something going on and you might need help, it might take you longer to admit, right? Like, it's admitting that there's a problem. before you can find the resources to help you with that problem.
Absolutely. And NOIFIS is a great example of an organization who offers both sides of it. So a lot of our programs are through referral, through Ministry of Children and Family, through children and youth with support needs. You can't access every program that NOIFIS has just by walking in off the street. But we do have programs that you can access as well. So we have free parenting groups. We have free kids and youth groups that anyone can access at any time. So, it's just keeping in mind that maybe what you're looking for isn't accessible at the moment, but there are different options as well.
So inclusion might also look like finding a community of people who have similar problems, similar questions.
Absolutely. To know that you're not alone and to have people that you can connect with who are in the same situation as you, I think that's incredible to have that.
And to find a connection with a community of people that you didn't actually know you were connected to, because you were telling us a story earlier about somebody that was reconnected with their grandparents. Can you tell that story? Because that was really cool.
Yeah, so we work closely with Ministry of Children and Family Development and Okanagan Indian Band, and we have a program called the Roots program that we run at NOIFIS through our Indigenous Services program. And we work really hard to make sure that kids and youth who are in care are staying connected to their culture. So that may be doing genealogy to find out where the kids come from, finding their grandparents possibly. Like it's really, really neat to be able to let someone know where they come from and make sure that they stay connected to it no matter where they go. Obviously there's a lot of kids who are in BC, actually over 4,000 kids who are in need of foster care in BC right now. So that's a lot of kids that are also potentially in need of adoption and looking for permanent homes too. So to be able to make sure that kids stay connected to their culture and their roots and they have some sort of a connection to bloodline family, that's a really important thing to have in there. It's all about keeping things inclusive and accessible too, right? We have this full circle of care at NOIFIS where we make sure that every individual has their individualized support, but also that it's trauma-informed care and it's the highest standard of care. And it is making sure that you respect the different cultures and diversity and the different needs of anyone, no matter what their background is. Mm-hmm. That's really inclusivity, right? It's making sure that you level the playing field of who is getting the care, that it doesn't matter what the circumstances or their experiences are. They're getting the same standard of care as anyone else.
I'm really excited for today's conversation. We have Rachel Zubik with us today. Rachel, you're a pillar in our community, and just having our brief conversation before we got onto this recording, you're connected with a lot of people, you know a lot of people, and so I think this is the perfect episode to have you on. Today we're talking about inclusive institutions, so how institutions in our society, in our community, are helping with inclusivity, period. That's the end of my sentence, are helping with being a more inclusive society. So Rachel, can you give us maybe a self-introduction, maybe a bit of your background and how you see yourself fitting into this conversation?
So I have been at the Community Safety Office for over 20 years now, and I've had the opportunity to see our community grow. That comes with good things, and it comes with some more challenging things that have happened. As we all know, we've seen the rise of homelessness, we've seen the rise of poverty, we've seen the rise of interconnectedness, which is something most people didn't realize. When I first arrived in the community, we were pretty fragmented, a lot of people working in their little silos, sometimes overlapping, and we changed that back in I would guess, probably the mid-2000s with the creation of a couple of teams, specifically Partners in Action. And Partners in Action looks at things from a very different perspective. It's problem-oriented, but it also encompasses the entire community. So I've always said that a community is very much like a tapestry, because we have to have all those interconnected threads. And if one or two threads kind of get a little loose, it's not so bad. But when we have many of them, we get big holes. And unfortunately, then the entire tapestry starts to fall apart. And we as a community have seen that happen when we've all gone into our own little worlds of trying to problem solve in a very inclusive or exclusive way. So with Partners in Action, it's what we call crime prevention through social development in action. And so crime prevention through social development looks at all of those areas in our community that come together that may not be the best for our community, but how can we support families or individuals, whether they're seniors, whether they're children, or whatever that looks like, so that they can be the best they can in the community? What protective factors can we put around them? And so that's what crime prevention through social development looks at, that in a way that has people coming together so that those people struggling don't end up as part of the criminal system, one way or the other. So for instance, a person goes into a shop, they get caught for shoplifting. Well, that individual shoplifting, what have they got in their bag? Well, they find out, they've got some minced beef, they've got an onion, they've got whatever that case may be, those different type of items that obviously is for subsistence level. So they're not exactly, stealing thousands of dollars, just something so they could have dinner that night. How do we help those individuals? Because they don't obviously have a support that they need. So we looked at that, and we've looked at different areas within the community. So I've had the privilege of being able to work with community groups, enforcement groups, social service providers, the business community, all of those, because we all have a stake in a healthy community. And it's inclusive. And again, it's in those individuals, that people that are mentally well, people that are mentally unwell. We've got people that have physical challenges. We've got people that have challenges that you cannot see, but yet they also have a disability, that have so much information to bring to the table and knowledge that we need those people at the table to create a healthy community.
I love how you've talked about how you looked at the problem wasn't the shoplifting. The problem is, why is that person shoplifting? Why is it they're feeling like they need to steal something in order to survive? And I think that's something that I don't know if everyone thinks about it that way, but I think that's amazing that there's somebody taking that approach.
It's really hard, I think, because a lot of the times when you look at a criminal system, it's black and white. You've done something wrong, therefore you need to be punished. However, many communities in many different societies look at things very differently, and we come at things from a restorative justice or practice. So restorative practices look at things a lot differently, in that a person has committed a harm. We don't look at it as the criminal and the victim. It's the person who did harm, the person that caused the harm, and then the person who was harmed. How do we repair that?
So what I'm hearing is inclusion looks like discovering the root cause so that you can go higher level, bigger picture, solve the problem on in a more sustainable way.
Yes.
And I also really loved the
Great
analogy. I loved the
that.
analogy of the tapestry. I'm picturing something really colorful and intertwined. And that's how I see Vernon. That's how I see our community, this really beautiful, colorful, intertwined place where everybody works together. And that was something else that you commented on too, Rachel, was the collaborative nature of our community.
Yeah.
And how nothing really happens effectively unless everyone works together.
We've just, I think this is the way that we would hope that most agencies or societies are going towards, is that or being able to work together as a team, because it's so much easier to be able to solve issues and matters. So I'd already mentioned the Partners in Action concept. So when we look at what the Partners in Action table looked like, so we would have people like enforcement, so RCMP bylaw. We would have the institutions like the school district, or we even have the library, because of course the nature of libraries have changed so much in terms of what they do in a community now. We look at the city of Vernon's there. I'm there, and I mean my position is being a community a safety coordinator, as I have an opportunity to be. Well, I don't have many barriers. I can be where I need to be, because as a community, that means that the community is everyone, not just certain sections, whether it's just the school or just this or just that. I have the privilege of being able to go to the seniors, to the business community, all the ethnic communities that we have here, that we have such a huge representation of how we can help with whatever issues they're dealing with in the terms that works for them. I think that's the best way to look at it. We've come a long way. At one point in time, we weren't like this. We weren't able to solve things the way that we did before. So I had mentioned, one of the teams that we had with the Partners in Action was the COOL team. So the COOL team stands for Camp Okanagan Outreach Liaison Team. And I think it's a perfect example how interagency collaboration and community collaboration for the betterment of our community is really, really being in our obvious in our community for quite a while. So initially, when the COOL team was created, it was because of a lot of misinformation that was hitting the streets in terms of what bylaw enforcement was doing at the time with some of the possessions of our homeless population that were out in the parks. They're saying they were throwing them out and they're getting rid of them and they weren't holding on to them at all, and that they're just throwing it out as garbage. And of course, in a lot of our homeless situations, this is everybody's life. That's their stuff. That's all they've got left, and it's their personal possessions. And it just wasn't true. And the situation there is that oftentimes that bylaws would hold on to things for a certain amount of time, just like any other found property, waiting for that person to try to connect. So we saw an opportunity there to get together and say, what can we do to solve this problem? So that initial meeting had at least 20 people at it, and it was everybody from some of our elected officials of the time. We had bylaw enforcement, we had RCMP there, we had social service providers, we had probation, we had the Ministry of Social Services. Everybody
Sounds really cool.
It was wicked. Ha ha ha. It was cool. But that
cool
team
kids.
is still is active, and now the COOL team is very much a part of the housing and the homelessness initiatives that we have here and what we've got going in Vernon. We've come a long way from having nothing to having a lot, but also we're not a lot. We still need so much more housing as a matter globally. But we've seen a lot of improvement there where we have the voice of those that are homeless and houseless to be able to speak to the matters at hand of what's needed in our community.
All right.
All right.
Well, here we are. We're continuing on with episode 2 of our social inclusion piece. Welcome, Leanne Hammond, to our podcast studio for Backyards to Boardrooms. Just a little introduction here. Leanne is the executive director of the Community Foundation of the North Okanagan here in Vernon, British Columbia. And she's got some very interesting things to share with us around our topic of social inclusion. Welcome, Leanne.
Welcome, Leanne.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
It's so nice to have you. I've seen Community Foundation in and around the community. I mean, I was born and raised here, so I've seen it my whole life, and seen some of the amazing initiatives that the foundation supports. And I saw recently a new fund, the Prosperity Fund, get released from Community Foundation, and so I thought, what better organization to talk about social inclusion than a foundation from our community that's supporting those kinds of initiatives. So would you maybe give us a little self-introduction and tell us where you came from and how you see the Community Foundation supporting social inclusion?
Sure, I'd be pleased to. I've been with Community Foundation North Okanagan for almost 10 years now, 8 years as ED, and before that in a consulting and a contract role. Before that, I was with Community Foundation in the Central Okanagan, so I've been in this kind of funding game for a long time. And I grew up in the Okanagan. Sue, you and I might be the only two that grew up in the Okanagan. And went off to Vancouver, went off to the big city, and then came back. I love the Okanagan. It's a beautiful place to live, work, and play. And I love being part of the nonprofit sector. The Prosperity Fund is an initiative from the BC government, actually, and it's putting money into the hands of community foundations throughout the province to help with initiatives in 2 areas. One is social inclusion, and the other is poverty reduction. And they're, of course, intricately related. And this was an unusual kind of government initiative in that for once, they said, you know better what's going on in community, and rather than really giving you a ton of framework and guidelines, we're going to let the community foundations throughout the province decide how they're going to approach this and use their own existing processes. So we're using our own grant cycle, and we've already given out some of the money through our existing grant cycle. And we are actually doing something innovative that I'll be presenting on actually probably for some time around working collaboratively with the other community foundations in our area. So yeah, we like to work cooperatively with the Central Okanagan and with the Community Foundation in the South Okanagan so that we can stretch our expertise and benefit from each other's processes, and if there's a way that we can kind of share resources, we tend to do that quite often, and it works beautifully for us. So this particular initiative we're calling the Okanagan Prosperity Fund. And we each have a pot of money to be able to give out in our respective communities. And we've also encouraged collaboration for groups that are doing work in this area that actually don't fit within the parameters of one particular community. Some of them are Okanagan-wide. Some of them are for the whole valley. And we really encourage that, because why reinvent the wheel? If something is working well in one community, why not just expand it to another community? So that's kind of how we're approaching it.
And we see that collaborative aspect is a really important topic especially in social inclusion, right? When you have a wider reach, right? More brains working on one project means that there's more access, there's more resource, there's just more to go around.
Yeah, exactly. And we've actually been, I think, quite collaborative in our approach with other funders, working with, for instance, the provincial government in this instance, but also working with Community Foundations of Canada who have accessed different pots of money, also working with local funders. Obviously, there's other big funders in our area, and we see them as collaborators, and we often partner. So where our funding leaves off might be where another private funder, private foundation, family foundation can pick up. So we really wanted to pare down the application procedure for this pot of money. So we have gone through and asked the least amount of questions possible. We've also done a process where they do a letter of intent, which is just some bullet points on what program or what process that the charity has in mind for dealing with inclusiveness or with poverty reduction. And then if it fits with the parameters of the program, then they're invited to put in an application. So rather than wasting time putting in an application that may go nowhere, we don't want people to waste their time. We want the charities to stay focused on what they do best, and so we want to make it as easy and accessible as possible, which fits very well with the whole inclusivity kind of inclusiveness thing.
So I really want to know what do they do best? Like, what are the parameters that you're working with? What do you see happening in our community?
Okay. I think the North Okanagan has an amazing array of charities and nonprofits that are doing incredibly valuable work. There are groups that are working on inclusiveness, and by that I mean are making sure that people feel like they belong, that no one's left behind. It's making sure that people feel like they have access to resources, to services, to a decent way of life, to dignity. And this particular pot of funding is for social inclusiveness as well as poverty reduction, and they both go hand in hand. So poverty reduction clearly can be focused on things like access to housing. It can be focused on access to food. So food security is a huge part of poverty reduction. And at the same time, are we making those things accessible for folks? What about folks with disabilities who have challenges? There's some really innovative programming that I wasn't really even aware of until we read the application forms that come in. Think about things even like arts and culture. Often it's people with privilege that get to take part in some of those initiatives that maybe other folks don't have access to. So one thing that stands out in my mind is an application that we received that I think was fantastic. And it was for people to attend a performance. I take that for granted. I can go to a performance when I want. But people who have perhaps different needs and different challenges perhaps can't stay seated for a full performance, perhaps need the lights to be on so that they can their visibility is easier for them. Perhaps make some more noise than would be acceptable in a typical type of performance venue. And so we've actually helped fund performances that are specifically aimed at folks with different needs. And I felt really good about that, because I thought, wow, I take for granted being able to go and see a music performance or a play. And I can, make it from the time the lights go down until there's the kind of mid-break. But what about folks who can't? Does that mean that they don't get to take part in something like that? So inclusivity, I think, is really about making people not only not fit in. So fit in means they have to change something. Inclusiveness for me means valuing various different people and where they're at in life, and making them feel like they belong, because they do.
Wow. That is just, it's so heartwarming to know that that's happening in our little community, that we're able to actually provide that kind of value to people, that just, like you said, if you didn't know that someone couldn't actually sit through an entire performance or film or whatever it is, you wouldn't even think of that. It's amazing that there's someone that's putting a program together that actually takes that into consideration.
Exactly.
What I really loved, and I heard you say, is meeting people where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard that a lot. Episode 1 was all about how to eradicate poverty, or the impact that poverty has. But what I'm realizing as we talk to more and more people is that all of these sustainable development goals that we're talking about, this particular episode is like quality education, reduce inequalities, strong institutions. Everything permeates everything. These are just labels that we're putting on bigger issues that are all interwoven in our communities.
Exactly. Where does one issue leave off and another one start? The overlap and the interconnection is incredible. One thing that I've noticed in particular in the North Okanagan, more so than I've seen anywhere else, is the cooperative spirit between the different nonprofits and charities and their willingness to work together. So often we'll receive a grant application from two groups that are wanting to work together. For example, in the food security area, we often have grant applications from groups that want to be able to provide some food support for the particular population that they specialize in. And on one hand, people, our grants committee, used to think, well, maybe that should all be left to one group who specializes in the procurement of food and the distribution of food. And then we started thinking about it more holistically, and realizing that no, people deserve to be served where they're comfortable and in a way that they're comfortable with. So even though we can work together, we can have them interconnected. So we can have food suppliers and services, and we can have a food bank work collaboratively with other food distribution. We can have local farmers, and we can have land to table coordinating with the Good Food Box, and as well with other different locations that are involved in food distribution. And so the more we work together on those things, the more it actually does have an effect overall on folks. And it's not everybody is in the same position. We have to find ways to preserve dignity and to allow people to feel comfortable reaching out for the help that they need.
You're so familiar with all the organizations, like you've just been kind of saying all these different groups that are doing this and doing that. It's really cool that you're so in tune with what's going on in the community, and it sounds like a lot is happening. And I really like that you said that they're starting to work together, because I know that in the past there has been some siloing in over the years, but it's really nice to hear that groups are getting together and collaborating on issues.
Yeah, that collaboration, I think, is key to making resources go farther. And it's also, I think, a new kind of post-COVID approach to recognizing that people know what they need, and that organizations know best what interventions will make the biggest difference for folks. So trusting, you'll hear that word, trust-based philanthropy, that phrase thrown out there. We really believe in that. We believe that it's about relationships, it's about experimenting, it's about giving, talking to people about what could improve their life situations and listening to them instead of being prescriptive or thinking somehow we know best. No, people know exactly what they need, and they're not shy about telling us if we just stop and listen.
And you said one of the most important things, I think, in making this world a better place is building more trust. That's it, right? Like, I don't know everything. One person, one organization doesn't have all of the answers, and so we need to be able to trust each other to build something better.
Yeah. Connection built on trust.
Yeah. That connection built on trust is really critical. It's what binds us together, and it's alone you can go fast, but together you can go far. I love that saying.
That's good. I like that too.
So Heath, you're right. You said it before we dove into those conversations. We know all three of these guests personally and in other aspects. You know, we've come across them in other areas in our community, but we learn something new every time.
Every time. And I just love hearing about I like hearing about their passion and about what they love about what they do and the organizations that they work with. And they really have their finger on the pulse of our community.
Sure. And so the next pulse we want to hear about is the community action aspect. So what can you do to help?
Okay, Vicki, tell us how people can get involved and support some of the initiatives that your organization is doing.
Well, I think just really being aware of the different programs that are offered through different resources in Vernon is a great place to start. And, there's different reasons why people give to charities, why they donate, why people become philanthropists. There's a variety of reasons. So just make sure that you are giving for your right reasons and what you want to have the expectation be out of that. I think also it's important to find something that you're passionate about to give to. So whether you are donating money, whether you're volunteering, whether you're supporting in a different way, I think it's really important that you're supporting something that you're passionate about and that you want to see impact your community. And when it comes to NOIFIS, we will gladly take cash donations and in-kind donations. And for us, it's really about that general support. So making sure that we can give the individualized support to anyone who needs it. And sometimes that looks like helping families out with extracurricular activities. We have a great program right now for youth and kids who are within NOIFIS programs that if they can't afford to do a cultural activity or art activity, sports activity, we will assist families if they need that help there based on what is best for the kid, what is best for the youth, what is best for the family, and what's going to help them ultimately. So if you're looking to support NOIFIS, that's a great way to support is just by giving either a general donation or donating gift cards maybe that we can give to families if they're having a tough time buying groceries that month. It's really just keeping that door open so that we can give that individualized support based on different situations.
Perfect.
You know what's really cool about all of this is that we're talking about things that are going on in our community, what Vicki, you're working on a daily basis and working on these issues right here in Vernon. And again, we didn't really say the words United Nations yet in this program, but we are working, what you're doing, what your organization is doing is actually working towards global improvement. And I think that's what we're trying to do with the show is make that connection that at a small scale level like Vernon, we're actually doing something to make the world a better place. And that's really what everyone needs to jump in on. And that's why, doing a little something with your organization or giving a little bit of money here or putting a little time there, that's what it requires. And that's what it's going to take in every little community all around this planet.
I think that's really important to remember that we look at a lot of issues that we face on a global scale from that big picture and things start small very often. And I think there's been a bit of a shift, unfortunately, especially in the past 5 years, that younger generations are not as involved with their communities as older generations. And I think we really need to shift that mentality. You see service groups who are constantly closing their doors because they can't get new members. And there's a huge impact that nonprofits feel when service groups disappear, because all those service groups support the nonprofits in our community. So it's just this trickling domino effect. And I think it's really important to start teaching our younger generations that being involved in your community in some capacity, whether it is, donating time and volunteering or, anything, just getting involved is so important, because it really affects everything down the line. And you can't make those small steps like you're talking about towards a better global community if you can't start them small.
It'd be awesome if we had sort of that built into our school curriculum, where kids actually picked a volunteer position or an organization that was part of the curriculum in the 10, 11, 12 stages. That would be really cool, actually.
So it does exist, actually. NOIFAS has counselors in every school in Vernon, high school and elementary school. And we have a great program called Connections that one of our counselors run, and kids can be a part of it, and they can volunteer, and they go out in the community, and they experience the community, connect to the community, connect to each other, and a lot of it is focused on volunteer work as well.
That's awesome.
So it's stuff like that. And so from the perspective of Backyards to Boardrooms, we're encouraging community action. And so I think that means to continue encouraging youth, empower the next generation, right? Because they're the future.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
And they're facing a lot of challenges right now, more so than I think a lot of other generations have faced. And youth, teenagers, kids, they're amazing. They are amazing. And I think sometimes they get a bit of a bad rap. So just remember what it was like when you were a teenager.
We were all one of them.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
Everyone
we were all
was.
there.
Let's maybe go a little easier.
Yeah. Like Mickey had said in episode 1, we're working towards a society where everybody wins and nobody gets left behind. So how can the community help be part of that?
So it's been really interesting. So over the past few years, you look back at all the things that you've done, you wonder what worked, what didn't work, because it's a frustrating process. It can be really disheartening sometimes, because we're at the whim of what's happening in our communities, from a pandemic level, from a housing level, from an opioid crisis level. We're constantly on. But, when I knew that we were on the right path was many years ago. We had a community forum, and we invited everybody to participate. I believe it was the first harm reduction strategy that we created. At the table, acting as peers, was at the time who would have been the chief of our police force, and one of the peers, so the people with lived experience, that I know for a fact would have probably spent time in our cells at some point in time. But they're acting on a level of being peers, of trying to solve a problem on the same level from two different perspectives. And when I sat back and looked at this table and saw them with their heads together having that conversation, I'm like, this is the beginning. We know that we've got the inclusiveness of the voices that need to be heard. So we see that now more often. We do have opportunities within various structures in our community, whether it's the city of Vernon or otherwise, where we can bring voices to the table. We've gone more in terms of having people be able to digitally be involved, because some people don't have the ability to get there. So they may have some type of mobility issues or not able to get from point A to point B for whatever reason. But we can get them involved in different situations within the city and tables. So we've got the housing initiative, we've got the climate, environmental issues that we have there, that we have the community involved at the table speaking to those issues as people that are knowledgeable in the field. We're the ones being affected. But people have to go looking for that. Like, people have to actually physically look to see, how can I get involved? Because oftentimes we are so busy going from point A to point B and just trying to survive that we're not thinking, hey, maybe I need to go read up on this and can I be a part of it? It's more the case of, why is this happening to me? I want to be part of the solution, but how do I become part of that solution?
There's so much more going on out there. Like, it's blowing my mind. I'm just listening to you. I don't have a lot to say. I'm just sort of like entrenched in what you're talking about. Even before we got on the mics here, we were talking about cool and the way the organizations all work together. And I don't think I even understood to the capacity that you're speaking right now is how at so many different levels working together to solve these issues. It's just blowing my mind. I love it.
For many years, I think we have left it up to other people and have felt frustrated by not being able to have a voice. And we have so many people here with so many talents and so much information and lived experience. And I mean, we're all living in this environment, so we all have lived experience of surviving. Being able to make our voices heard has always been a challenge. We have those abilities to be able to have that voice if we actually look for the opportunities. And I can, whether it's being at the table with the Vernon District Immigrant Services and doing workshops with them and working with some of our newcomers that are coming to our community and providing so many incredible skills and actually giving them an opportunity to feel at home in our community. Or whether it's working with our homeless population with the COOL team. There's so many amazing things, but what's happened is the individuals that we typically look at and say, well, you're the problem, have said, we're not the problem. We want to be part of the solution. How can we be put to work? They came up with their own team called the Vernon Trench People Against Discrimination. And they became a society last year. And it started out with somebody saying, we want to be part of a solution and be part of community. How can we do that? And it's helping each other to get back up on their feet, or at least giving somebody a bottle of water when they're obviously so dehydrated that they're not being able to function.
If me or somebody walked into your office, Rachel, and said, I want to do something, I want to help, what process would you go through to help find that person somewhere or give them something to do?
Well, it depends. If a person comes into my office looking to find the place that they fit in, I basically ask them, what is it that they wanted to, what were they looking for? Where did they want to participate? We have so many opportunities. So within my office, so the community safety office is a little different in that the individuals there are working with a storefront operation. So think of it as a classic community policing office where you come into the office, you have individuals there that can take a report if they require or point you in the direction of those services that you need. So we can operate 50 different programs out of my office, but typically it's an education facility. So if an individual is actually looking to participate in an area that isn't working with the public like my office does, I can point them to that that agency, whether it's the Upper Mission, whether it's one of the sustainable environment committees that the city has, all those different things, we can point them in the way they need to go. So
yeah, that's great. You're a resource, right?
And sometimes people just need to be pointed in the right direction, right? Like myself, if I start Googling something or looking for something and then I start reading this and then I click a link and I go to a different page and I start reading that and then I end up
the rabbit hole.
Down the rabbit hole, like 10 miles away from where I actually wanted to start. Whereas if I can just have a few really purposeful conversations, you kind of figure out where you need to be. So, I mean, that's what we're after here. Backyards to boardrooms. We're bringing those conversations from backyards into boardrooms onto a podcast to help our community take action. So, speaking of doing things together, let's talk about how the community can contribute to the work that's happening at the Community Foundation.
Well, the Community Foundation basically exists to provide primarily funding for the groups that do the valuable grassroots on-the-ground work out there. We're not a service delivery organization. We are a funder, a collaborator, a catalyst, and a community leader. So we need people to basically give, to open their wallets and their hearts, and to support us. The more unrestricted, unstructured funding that we receive, the more we can really move money to where it's needed most. So on the one hand, when a donor comes to us and has favorite charities that they want to support, that's great. On the other hand, if they leave a portion of the funding open so that we can leverage it out into the community in a way that really makes a difference in those pain points, in those areas that are the most in need, that's that's really what we're after. So we want to work with donors and have relationships with our donors so that they are open to listening and being guided, I guess, in what the real needs of the community are. And we have various ways of doing that. We do a vital signs report every couple of years, and as Heath said, we're very connected to the charities and really listen to what the needs are, and they change. They change over time, and we need to be very responsive to that.
And I think, too, just as a side note, what I'm hearing is that you need that collaboration, you need that input from nonprofits and charities within the community. And so perhaps if people are involved in those charities, right, pushing them to share, to trust, to put out to the world what they need, and maybe get involved in the foundation that way by asking for money.
Yes. So we have a grant cycle that we run every year, our community grant cycle, and that's kind of where it's the most open way of asking for funding. But there's a lot of different ways, and so the more we get to know what the needs are out there by talking to charities, by talking to their boards, by talking to their executive directors, the more we know what to aim our funding towards. And we've been consulted by various different funders as well, and we sometimes have a bit of a team approach. I'd like to see a lot more of that in the future, collaborating on, okay, if you provide funding for kind of capital items, then can we provide some funding for more operations support? And can we both provide funding that is allows charities to plan ahead, look ahead, and to actually stop and think about thoughtfully what are they doing and what is working and what is not.
And what I really love about CFNO is the sort of the creative ways that you guys have actually manage the money and fund things. I think it's really interesting. If you could kind of mention that a little bit, I think it's really interesting for people to understand, because we've talked about this before, money in, money out, and the competing of dollars and funding dollars in the community. Just so there's an understanding of how the foundation goes about allocating those funds, because you do have some very, very unique and interesting ways that you guys do that.
Yeah, I try to keep it as simple as possible. So money in, money out is what we do. Money in can come in through a variety of different ways. So a donor can come to us and make a one-time gift where they just want to provide us with a small amount of funding, and they're not interested in telling us how to use it. They just want it to go into the community fund type thing. We also have donors that come to us and start up what we call an endowment fund, which is a forever fund, where we actually invest that nest egg of money and then just use the income each year as a perpetual kind of funding machine to be able to fund different charitable needs in the community. And then we have a newer, for lack of a better word, kind of approach or product, which is spend down funds, which is when a donor comes to us and said, I don't know if I believe in forever, but I do believe in a long time. So how about I give you, for instance, a gift, and then you spend it down over, say, 10 years. That's, I think, where a lot of interest is right now, is can we make a bigger impact if we were to do these, what I call term endowments or spend down funds, where you could provide a predictable source of income for charities over a 10-year period, and then the donor can change to supporting another charity and another charity. If you do enough of that, you start having some predictability, which to donors is it's planning, and it really makes a bigger impact. And to charities, that is unheard of. That is something that, to know that they're going to have a certain amount of money coming in for the next 10 years provides them with the stability they need to actually really run properly and be able to plan and make a bigger difference.
Okay, I adore all three of those people. They're so great, and every time I talk to them, I just fills my heart.
What I think the thing that stood out to me the most with all three of those conversations, all very, very different organizations, but all of them work very collaboratively with other organizations in Vernon.
Well, organizations tend to work in very siloed efforts because there was only so much funding for many years. There was only
Right.
so much program accessibility.
Yeah, but more and more, and especially post-COVID, post-pandemic, we're
Right.
seeing the benefit of collaboration and working together.
Well, and we're finding that a lot of the issues cross over as well. You know, whether we're talking about poverty or homelessness or not having access to food, not having, you know, access to organizations and support. I mean, a lot of the issues really cross over, and so that forces organizations more or less to also cross over and support each other, and because nobody can know everything about all things. You have to have people in a variety of places specializing and supporting the community across the board.
Yes. So, moral of the episode, for social inclusion, reach out, ask for help, get involved. Things are more accessible than they seem. You just have to find the right organization and the right fit for you to help you figure that out. Thanks for listening to Backyards to Boardrooms.
Don't forget to subscribe, and all the links to the cool things you learned are down in the notes below.
Bye!
Bye!